Hi there. In this video, I want to run through the common mistakes that I see brands make when running meta ads. So the first thing to note here is over-segmentation in campaign or ad set structure. So first thing to note, and this applies to most ad platforms, learning and optimization is stored, or that data is stored at the campaign level. So the more you split your account up into many different campaigns and split your spend up into many different campaigns, generally speaking, the slower those campaigns will optimize because they simply have less spend and less data as a result flowing through them for the algorithm to optimize off. And generally speaking, the slower they'll optimize and the worse they'll perform. So generally speaking, try and consolidate your account into as few different campaign or ad set structures as possible. So in terms of my recommended structure on Meta, and I've created a separate video on this linked below, and just for reference, all the points mentioned here I've created separate videos on, and I've linked all of those in the video description as well. So in terms of ideal meta campaign structure, single Advantage Plus campaign with one ad set, all of your top performers, then a second cold targeting campaign here where you have individual ad sets with budget set at the ad set level, and then a third sale campaign here for running sales. Each sale that you launch that into a separate ad set. Then the second point here is overspending on existing audiences. So again, more detailed video link below, and I'd highly recommend setting up your audience definitions as soon as possible so that you have an accurate view over exactly what you're spending on those different audiences. So what you're spending on new users, what you're spending on engaged users, and then what you're spending on existing customers, to ensure that you focus the majority of your spend on new customers or acquiring new customers, because in my opinion, that is the main role of paid ads, is to acquire new customers. So you want to always ensure that you're spending on new audiences, not existing audiences for the most part. Then the next thing on the list here is post ID usage to continue building up social proof on creative. So let's say, for example, you have in this campaign structure here, you have a high performing creative that appears in one of your ad sets here, and you want to run that same creative in the high performing campaign structure up here. Now you want to ensure that all of those likes and comments and all of that engagement on that specific post in this specific ad set here are also reflected on the ad that you run in the scaling campaign here, because obviously that just adds additional, again, social proofing to that specific ad that you're running, and naturally will increase the credibility of that specific post or ad. So in order to do that, you have to use what's called a post ID. Again, separate video on that below. And again, that's a great way to ensure that you continue compounding that social proof over time with every dollar that you spend on ads. Then the next point here is misreading frequency at the campaign and ad level. So I'd highly recommend splitting your view in terms of frequency and how you optimize campaigns by looking at campaign level frequency and ad level frequency differently or separately, because a lot of courses mention just monitoring campaign audience exclusions or kind of creative fatigue by frequency at the campaign level, where you obviously have a lot of ads running within a specific campaign. So the same campaign can target a user multiple times, but that doesn't mean that the same ad has been shown to that user multiple times. And a lot of the time, users may take 2 to 3 touch points, maybe even more, before they actually engage with a specific ad. So in terms of audience fatigue, I'd recommend looking at campaign frequency, but in terms of creative fatigue, I'd recommend looking at ad frequency and ad level frequency. Then next on the list here is budget increases. So again, separate video below, but a key thing with budget increases is not increasing by a large enough percentage. With a budget increase, you want to ensure that you create a clear delineation in the data between before the budget increase and after the budget increase to accurately see whether that budget increase was a success or not. If you make a very small percentage increase in budget, so let's say 5 to 10% increase, that won't really have a measurable impact on your store as a whole. And a lot of the time, natural fluctuations in revenue on your store can kind of be misleading or can skew the results of that budget test. So I'd recommend approaching a budget increase from a standpoint of increase by the largest percentage you possibly can. Ideally, 30 to 50% budget increase would be a good range, so that again, you create a clear delineation between before the budget increase and after the budget increase, and how your profitability numbers compare between those two periods. Then the next thing on the list here is using 7-day click and 1-day view attribution setting. Again, separate video on that below, but I'd highly recommend only using the 7-day click attribution setting to avoid the algorithm pushing spend towards users that just view and don't actually click through to your site. And specifically push spend towards views that are specifically from users that are just about to purchase. And realistically, it doesn't really make much difference whether they were served that ad or not. They were going to purchase anyway. So rather push that spend towards a new customer or acquiring a new customer instead. Then next thing on the list here is creative testing. So again, separate video below, but I'd highly recommend that you focus on testing net new creative. So not just testing very basic iterations of the same creative. So a change in background color or some USP text overlays added onto the creative, etc. Generally speaking, any sort of iteration that's made on a creative won't perform vastly differently from what I've seen to the original creative. And therefore it's essential to test completely new creative, not just iterative creative. So new creative, completely separate or completely different filmed video, completely different photo shoot, etc. And getting as much diversity from a creative perspective into the account, but again, all new and different creative. And then the last thing on the list here is launching sale creatives into evergreen structures. And this was touched on in this meta account structure video as well. You want to ensure that you don't incorporate or launch sale creative into a structure where you don't have control over how much budget gets allocated to that sale creative. Because sale creative is pushing a very appealing offer and is obviously very appealing to an existing audience and will naturally get more engagement on that creative, it will get prioritized by Meta in terms of spend allocation. So, sorry, hit the wrong button there. If you launched a sale creative into a campaign structure like this, what you'll see happen is the spend will get pulled away from all of these evergreen ads, so ads that don't promote a sale or discount and push the product and the product USPs and run year round. Spend will get pulled away from these ads and pushed into that sale creative, causing a bit of a learning phase reset when that sale creative is launched. And then obviously when you turn that sale off, the spend has to get redistributed across the rest of the creative again. And again, causes a bit of a learning phase disruption and reset. Also, you don't have control over how much spend is allocated to that sale creative. So I'd highly recommend keeping your sale ads and your sales structures separate, either within a separate ad set within a campaign with the budget set at the ad set level, or in a separate campaign completely where each new sale you run, you can launch a separate ad set or just a separate, completely separate campaign for the sale, and obviously include all of your sale assets into that single campaign. So that's everything I wanted to mention. Hopefully you found some value here, and thanks for your time.